Here we go. Hello, Gators. I had a great time this morning with 14 remarkable art students, and we had a wonderful conversation about a project that we're going to engage in. And for you, I know most of you in this room are in your 7th, 8th day of college. Is that true? Yes. How does it feel? Good. Yep. Welcome to an absolute transformation in your lives. Welcome to the time where you become you. Welcome to the time when you're not following someone else's schedule, but you're making your own. You're making your new friends, you're developing peers, you're developing relationships outside from the constraints of home, of mom and dad. It's a new world for you. I also think it's an adventure. Aside from all the stuff that may happen in a classroom or in a dorm room, it's a time for you to experience life as someone who's developing, part of human development. It's a time for you to explore boundaries beyond the ones you've been accustomed to, because you have all the freedom to do that. It's time for you to grow as you explore this major, but also as you explore other academic pursuits, as you explore extracurricular activities. You're no longer in high school. You're now in college. It's a time to grow and to learn. And the one thing I want to do with this lecture, with this class, is to have you think about water in a completely different way. For about 18 years, you've probably thought of water as one thing, or two or three. And I want you to completely refresh the way you think about water. So let's have a little conversation. What is water? Okay, I saw a hand up there. Water keeps us alive. Hey, go ahead. What else is water? Back there in the gray shirt. Right. Say that again. Okay, to an oxygen what? There you go. Okay, that's pretty chemical of you. Yep, what about you? A medium of transport. What are we transporting? What? Okay, a medium of transport. Constant motion. What else is water over there? Okay, and what else? Okay, something that a dissolvent is what you said. What else? It also, go ahead. Speak a little louder. A means of cleansing, right. Cleansing. What kind of cleansing? Cleaning what? I mean, my clothes. What else? There was a purple shirt back there. Art. Water is art? Okay, what else is water? I'm not going to disagree with you in any way. What else is water? You're speaking to an artist, by the way. What else is water? Where are my art students? We had this discussion this morning. What else is water? Play. You can play in water. Yep. Water is relaxing. Okay, I'm gonna pull out a book. Who has a loud, powerful voice that can read like 3 sentences from a book? He does? Great, come up here. You know what I should do? I was at a comedy club. I'm actually going to pick you for picking him. Get up here. I saw that little trick. All right, so here's a book called Paradise Lost, the Environmental History of Florida. Thanks. And it's a series of essays about Florida's environmental history. And in it, let's read. Oh, I should put my glasses on. Okay, just read the whole first paragraph until it ends. Okay? What's your name?
Natalia.
What is it?
Natalia.
Natalia? Say hi, Natalia.
Hi, Natalia.
And what class are we talking to? The class of? I can't do math here, so it's 20. You guys are 2018? Hello, class of. Is that beautiful? The class of 2018. Natalia, speak to your class.
It is hard to think about Florida's environmental history without also thinking about water.
Its presence is apparent in so many contexts. Along more than 1,000 miles of coastline, and many more miles if one includes shorelines of Florida, thousands of islands, in rivers, creeks, and thousands of lakes that dot the landscape, not to mention hundreds of thousands of backyard swimming pools and enormous groundwater aquifers that store billions of gallons, some of which squirt to the surface of form and fabled springs.
Let's turn. Where are we?
Wait, no, we're here. In driving rains from frequent thunderstorms and occasional hurricanes, and even in the air around us in the form of water vapor, eliciting complaints that feels muggy. Indeed, all of water has combined with Florida's mostly flat terrain to create millions of acres of swamps, sloughs, mangroves, and marshes, collectively called wetlands.
That's good. That's great there. So, hey, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I don't need that. So, water is Florida, right? The essay talks about it being defined by water. Literally, the boundaries of this very peninsula are defined by water. The aquifer below it, this state of ours has been ocean. Most of it has been ocean time and before. As sea levels have risen and receded over millions of years, this state of ours has emerged and submerged in the water. I'm talking about millions of years. I'm not talking about the crisis that we're facing, and I will talk about in a minute regarding global climate change. I'm just talking the natural processes. It is shaped by the water vapor. It is shaped by the streams, by the aquifer. And the reason I want to talk to 160 engineers and 14 students of art about water is that water is going to be the biggest problem you as thinkers are going to solve after you walk across your stage with your degree in the class of 2018. And I want you to understand water. I want you to understand what engineers have done before addressing water. And I want you to have that context of what Florida is and what water is before you go around, deciding how it is you're going to manage water for the next 500 years. So let's go and have a little exploration about water. Are you with me so far? The other thing art students told me this morning, I'm not sure I wouldn't speak about it, they said that water was life, water was power, right? Water can be ritual. Water can be moving, and water can be moved. 100 years ago, this year, one of the greatest engineering feats of the day, of time, was accomplished. And your university is honored to hold the archives of the history of the Panama Canal, right here in your library, not far from this building. And this summer, in August, your university, and get used to that word, for the rest of your life, you will be Gators. This is your university, this is your family. Is going to host an exhibit and a series of exhibits to commemorate this momentous occasion. So who can tell us what the Panama Canal is and where it is located? Okay, I picked on you already. Let's go with you. Really loud so everyone can hear you.
The Panama Canal is a canal connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans by cutting through the thinnest part of Panama.
And where is the Panama located?
Central America, Mexico, Costa Rica.
Right. I was trying to be funny, obviously, in Panama, right? What about in 1910? Where was the Panama Canal located? Yeah? Well, actually, it probably didn't exist then, right? It was being built. I'm trying to get you to think about something, and that is about consequences and what occurred. So through this class, and hopefully by participating in the extracurricular activities that your university gives you, you're going to learn a little bit about the Panama Canal and its history. You're going to learn how there were battles to have it built, how it was something that for centuries had been talked about and thought about, and how many people perished and how many ecosystems perished in order to bring greatness, in order to bring economic vitality. And part of what I want you to explore and think about is the impact that we as humans can have on our planet. And also the unintended consequence of our engineering, the unintended consequence of our surgery on planet Earth. As a species, we've got to feel really big and proud about carving through land and connecting to oceans. I mean, that's big, right? I mean, that's pretty momentous, right? Right? I mean, we're celebrating it 100 years from now. But I'd like to argue that that really momentous thing happens in Florida every day as we carve canals and as we dredge and as we build developments in housing. Let me take you on a little journey because I want to talk to you a little bit about how you can participate in this commemoration. Through my artwork, I use a lot of activities and processes to celebrate important moments. And I want to partner with you, with this class, and with the art class, in commemorating 100 years of the building of this canal. In the past, I've commemorated other things. I landed in the South Pole on the very anniversary, the 50th anniversary, of the creation of the South Pole Station by the Navy Sea Bees. And in order to mark that event, I mean, it's a big deal to get to the only continent that humans did not naturally inhabit as they populated the planet when they left Africa about 60,000 years ago. It's pretty momentous. It happened during the Cold War, and it was a huge feat, a huge accomplishment for our nation to get there and to do this. And I thought to use the moving ice sheet, which by the way is water, right? It's frozen water. Use the moving water, the moving ice sheet that blankets the South Pole as an instrument to mark time. And what I did is I put a flag at the very location on that moving ice sheet where the South Pole stood during each of the past 50 years. So if you could imagine that there'd be a big blanket on top of this table, right? And this hole right here is the South Pole, right? This little thing right here is the South Pole. If I were to take my blanket and put a flag on it, after a year, this flag moves, the South Pole is still there. My flag is now here. You get that? And then the next year on that, I put another flag. The blanket is moving, the South Pole is still there. See how that works? And you do that for 50 years, and you can, on a piece of glacier that's moving 10 meters a year, space flags 10 meters apart, and tell a story of human history. Now, the reason I did this is to honor the scientists that wintered down there and devoted their lives to advancing humanity by looking at the stars, by looking at neutrinos, by looking at earthquakes, by looking at all sorts of research down at the very bottom of the world. And I put on each of these flags the coordinates, the longitude and latitude of different events that happened on the world above when South was on that point. So for instance, for 1957, I put Sputnik's launch pad, right? The satellite, the first satellite the Soviets sent into space, that humans sent into space. In 58, I marked the first transatlantic flight that happened, Pan Am in 58. I went on in 59, the microchip's invention. 1960, we dove into the deepest portions of our waters. And obviously in 69, another incredible feat for humanity. We land on the moon. And like that, in 76, the Viking 1 and 2 land on Mars. These are big things that students like you once they went into their professions, accomplished to transform the way humans interact, think about themselves, and think on this planet. These are pretty big things, right? These are like momentous things, things that transform and change the world, right? I put it within the 500 meters of ice that capture human history at the South Pole. And then, for 2007, I put a mangrove seedling replica. And conceptually, what I wanted to do was juxtapose human timeline, all these big engineering feats, all these big things that humans had created, and juxtapose it against this little seedling. It's going to take that little seedling I planted 150,000 years to travel at 10 meters a year across 1,500 kilometers and theoretically set its roots. Why do you think an artist goes to the South Pole and puts a bunch of banners representing 50 years and juxtaposes it to 150,000 years? What do you think I was trying to do? Why are there always hands in the back? It's usually the guys in the back that don't want to talk. But we'll go for it. Go ahead. And then we'll go to the front.
Okay. Like perspective on our life and demonstrate that like there's a lot more to who we are than the brief period of time that we experience in our lives.
Okay.
I believe you're trying to relate past and future together. In the past 50 years, we've had all these great feats. Imagine what will happen in 150 years. But at the same time, you're saying that the mangrove seed will still be extremely important in the state of Florida and the rest of the world.
Anyone else? Thank you. Anyone remember physics? Anyone remember Roy G. Biv? Come on, who's Roy G. Biv? You just saw him on my flags. What's Roy G. Biv? It's the colors that your human eye can see, right? So I'm giving you Roy G. Biv. I'm giving you the colors of human history. But there was a history to Antarctica before we got there. We actually got there in 1914, but we permanently lived there since 1957. And there's going to be a huge history after we leave. What I was trying to do is have us look at human time frames and at geological time. And I do that so that we're not stuck in our arrogance thinking that we control everything, right? There are wavelengths beyond visible light, right? Clearly, we're operating in what we see, but there are other things that impact us beyond what's obvious to us, beyond what happened during these 50 years. You as engineers are going to carve my state. You're going to build it. You're going to problem solve our water shortage. You're going to build bridges. You're going to be doing a bunch of stuff that's going to further transform the state that we have. In the past half century, the first half of the last century, we lost millions, 12 million acres of wetlands in this state, drained. Intentionally so, because we thought that would better our state. And we have spent a lot of time and treasure trying to undo the harm that we intentionally created, thinking that these were just swamps with malaria and mosquito, right? We have created all sorts of manipulations to our earth without having the foresight to understand what happens, but worse than that, I think, without having the humility of understanding that there's something completely more precise, a machine more fine-tuned than anything you will ever build or I will ever paint. And that is nature. Nature is an awesome thing. It has got a feedback loop that is completely in tune. If in your work you can mimic, biomimic nature, you'll be more successful than something you try to innovate on your own. And in many ways, we have completely destroyed the very state of nature that this guy landed on 500 years ago last year. Ponce de Leon got here 500 years ago, right, to Florida, with the idea of really colonization, not a fountain of youth. But if he were to somehow reappear in land today, he wouldn't recognize our coastlines. As an artist, my job is to try to manage the change, manage the lack of wilderness. So I use the grid method. This sort of mimics a city block to replicate the role of a flower. What's the role of a flower besides, an anniversary gift? Say that again? Sex. Continue. Keep on going because it doesn't end there. What's the role of a flower? I love it. I'm speaking to freshmen. This is great. What's the role of a flower?
Beauty.
Beauty, and. It's to create plants, right? It's to have its seeds distributed so that it could grow more plants, right? So as an artist, I've created this vector of humans instead of pigeons, and an art piece where we put seeds beyond the very flower I cut and distribute it to people so that they can plant at home. In fact, that's how I commemorated 500 years of Florida history. Remember, I'm telling you, I commemorate events. So here's one where I invited botanists to select 500 wildflowers that were around when Ponce de Leon landed here and named Florida for the Spanish word for flower is flor, so Florida. Then I invited 500 artists to depict those flowers as a way of inspiring 500 Floridians to plant 500 gardens dedicated to 500 different people who helped shape Florida history. So the monument I was creating in this case was a monument of wildflowers or a monument of a garden to commemorate history. In the South Pole, it was a clock to commemorate history. And in a place that will make you marvel if you were to visit it, I created some banners to commemorate the discovery of the Higgs boson or the God particle. I was invited to the CERN laboratory in Geneva. I still, in awe, as much awe as I am of this 17-mile superconductor, proton-smashing tunnel bordering France and Switzerland that's 300 meters below the ground, where protons collide to determine whether these subatomic particles can give validity to a theory of what gives enough weight to an electron so that it can slow down long enough so that it can be captured by the electric magnetic force of a proton so it can create that little atom you guys were talking about that is going to bond with an oxygen atom and another hydrogen atom to create water. Without the Higgs boson and its discovery, by having scientists sit and analyze different patterns as these collisions were captured in 42 different universities across the world, including this one and mine at FIU. Scientists discovered that there was indeed a Higgs boson, and through these event displays, they proved it 2 years and 5 days ago in Geneva. And to mark that occasion, I created these 5 banners that hang 100 meters above the very location where these atoms collided and this was discovered. So you see an artist that time and time again tries to use art as a way of capturing and informing and telling moments in human history. Well, now it's our turn, your turn, this class's turn, this university's turn, to mark a moment in human history. This is, a rendering of the Panama Canal. So tell me, how is the Panama Canal relevant to the guy in the gator tie-dye, blue and orange t-shirt there? What does that have anything to do with you? Like, what does this matter to you that 100 years ago, a bunch of guys were carving across some rock to create a canal? Speak really loud, please. It requires. Mm-hmm. A little louder, please. But that was so long ago. That was 100 years ago. Who cares? What does that have to do with, where do you live? What county? Where are you from? Leon, Tallahassee? So what does Tallahassee have to do with something that happened 100 years ago? How is this relevant to you? What's your name? John? That's what you get for wearing a tie-dye. So John, what does this have to do with you? Like, who cares? Why not mark some other important thing? You got a lifeline here, yeah? Yeah. Right. So it helped with globalization. It probably helped put, a lot of economic things in order. Okay, great. Well, let's celebrate this in Panama. Why are we here in Gainesville celebrating this? Okay.
It shows how humans can alter their environment, like on large scales, and how that can really change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that shows us in the future if we ever want to alter anything, we have to think of pros and cons. Because we create.
Speak really loud so everyone can hear you. But yeah.
So that shows us in the future if we ever want to do something like that again, we have to think of the pros and cons like very thoroughly. Because if we didn't think about doing that, it could have messed up the entire ecosystem and messed up like all the areas around there. So it shows us what like to think of things before we do them to the environment.
What do you think happened in Panama while this was going on? I mean, I gave you some clues earlier, but does anyone have any idea or does any guesses as to like what was going on at the time, politically, economically? All the way in the back? Exact. Go ahead. Keep on going. So our country was carrying a pretty big stick right there, right? For its own self-interest. And you could argue global interest too, right? I mean, to create this route. And then what happened in this independent nation? We control the canal for the next, So as engineers, you don't live inside an equation. You live in a political world. You live in a public policy world. You live in a funding world. You live in a world with legislators and governors and advocates, right? So I don't want you to think of the Panama Canal as just some dynamite and some mining, but I want you to think of the geopolitical aspects of what happened in Panama. Okay? What else? Give me more about Panama, the history of 100, yeah, in the back.
Back in time, like 1900, Colombia actually controlled Panama for quite a while, and the Panamanians were like really mad at the Colombian government. So the United States helped fund to overthrow the Colombian grip in Panama, and so that's how we got there originally. And Theodore Roosevelt said, hey, it'd be like good for commerce. It's good about the Panamanians who built the canal. So we helped fund them too.
And what about environmentally? I don't know that there was a really strong record. The good news is that you do have a library here, which will hopefully give you some of that data. But if you raised your hand, if you have a little information on that, I'd love to know. Do you know about the ecological history of what happened?
Yes. When they were building the Panama Canal, there was a lot of, like, where they built it was a bunch of wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of mosquitoes, and during that time, malaria was a really big issue. So if you look at the people that built the canal, got a bunch of oil and put it in the wetlands so that the mosquito larvae couldn't develop and like increase the population of mosquitoes by a lot, so they were able to build the canal without losing a lot of men.
Right. And what about other ecological issues with the canal? So when you build a canal and you bring water in, you flooded the valley. When you flood the valley, anything that lived in a wetland or that lived in a dry land is no longer living, right? And if I told you a little while ago that nature's completely fine-tuned, I mean, these are ecosystems that are finely attuned to one another. So the web of life just got cut by having whatever food source was at the bottom of this valley ended. I want you to go into an exploration, of course, in everything we do. I was telling the art student this morning, I actually live in a house that used to be wilderness, and every one of you do too. And when I landed here on an airplane, The tarmac, that used to be wilderness too. And if I ever get hospitalized, I'm going to be hopefully in a very sterile and clean concrete building that's going to take care of my wounds, right? I'm not arguing against development. Obviously, we are part of this planet and we need to find ways of accommodating. Your challenge as Floridians, your challenge as the future engineering students, and I speak to you engineers because I had a wonderful 2-hour conversation with the artists and their challenge. But your particular challenge as engineers is that your state is growing. This university, a decade ago, had a researcher claim that we'd be up to 24 million people by 2030 in this state, if you can imagine that. Your aquifer, the water you drink, the thing that equals life, is receding. That's going to change everything from the water you can use to your wetlands, to irrigation, to agriculture. And on top of that, about a month ago, scientists proved that the western Antarctic ice sheet is going to fall into the ocean and raise our sea levels about 700 years earlier than we thought they would. And your coasts are going to erode and be submerged. And you, the people in this room, have to solve that problem. Welcome to college. I'm serious. This is your challenge. And how to do that in a way where you do not leave a planet to your grandchildren that's just about squids and cockroaches because we've killed every other animal on the planet. That is your challenge. That is what you're here to problem solve. That's what you're here to mitigate. And I'm trying to create an art project that has you connect with the reality. And the way I think I can make the Panama Canal relevant is by looking at what happened 100 years ago, or completed 100 years ago. It took longer than a year to complete. And juxtapose that with what we have done here. This is the creation of the Miami Trail. It took decades to make because some people wanted to fish in Fort Myers when they were being tourists in Miami. And that process took a lot of time and treasure and even a county given to and named after some guy who promised to finish the last stretch of the road named Collier. And in so doing, they created a 30-foot-long barricade that completely killed the bottom half of that, and then spent the subsequent decades creating more canals and dredges using some of the very same tools and dynamite that were used to create the Panama Canal to manage the water flow. All the while clearly, obviously, thinking they were doing good. I mean, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. It's just that they didn't know any better, but you do. Right? And that's what this project aims for you to do. And the way I want you to do that is I want you to approach it with a certain amount of humility and not just learn about the mistakes of long ago, but learn about the mistakes of today. This is a project I did at the White Mountain National Forest up in New Hampshire. Hurricane came by, and the little road that was next to a brook was washed out as the river, as a brook was rerouted with the flowing waters. And we came and we created like a little hurricane track across that brook, marking the path of the hurricane. And the National Forest Service was charged with figuring out whether or not they were going to rebuild that road next to a brook so that when the next hurricane came, that very road would erode and we'd have the same problem again. Same question that the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy asks beach homeowners in New Jersey to answer. The same question that people who build high-rise condos on the edge of South Beach where I hang out have to ask as they know they're on the track of a hurricane and sea levels are rising. Right? And what this project, where we try to engage in the most futile act, which is to reroute the flow of the river, right? asks us to do is to surrender to the force of nature. If for engineers that word is too strong, how about coexist? Find a better way of coexisting with nature. So the way I do that in this project is I'm asking you to create something called Panama Canal equivalents. And your professors are going to work with you on the assignments. But generally, if it's okay for me to explain the project in its completion, or in its total scale, we're creating a very complex, big art project here that has a bunch of moving parts. And it all involves about you getting to know water. So the first thing we want to do is have each of you participate in a blog. There's going to be a blog that we're creating. It's a Tumblr blog that the College of Fine Arts is putting together called Moving Water. And the first thing we want to do is for each of you to know each other. You already met John and you've met Natalia. But there's another 158 of you to meet. And there's all these wonderful art students to meet. So you're going to get to know each other through this blog that we're creating called Moving Water. And what we want you to do is just find a picture of yourself in the water. Your earliest memory. Maybe you're floating in a raft with a bunch of Girl Scouts. Or maybe you're camping. Or maybe you're in a swimming pool. Or maybe you're with your family in a picnic. Just an early memory of you and water. And post that. And then just give us your name, where you're from, a little blurb about you, just so that people get to know who you are. This is also public, so don't put stuff that you don't want the general public, even outside this classroom, to read, okay? But it's just a general introduction to you, okay? The second thing we're going to ask you to do, and there's a really hard thing, but here's where you put your engineering hats on. I want you to figure out how much land was moved to create the Panama Canal. I have zero clue. I have no idea what that amount is. Or you can find another variable of your choosing, or your professors can work with you. Another thing is how many acres of wetland were destroyed or disturbed. I just want a quantitative measure, right, of what impact humans had on that isthmus to create the canal. A number, a quantitative measure, okay? Then, I want you to go back to your counties, go online, and find some engineering project that was created either by the Army Corps of Engineers or by a developer or by a state government a long time ago, in the 50s, whenever it was, where nature, your landscape, was transformed. Building a canal, building a seawall, creating pits for mining, whatever it is that changed this into this. What changed Florida 1513 Ponce de Leon to Florida John from Leon County 2014, except there's Broward County, right? This, by the way, if you're a human being inhabiting here, may be a good thing, I'm not so sure. But if you're an egret or a heron, you're not having a good time right now, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your data and input it into this ceramic tile mural that I'm creating, where I juxtapose the silhouette of the Panama Canal and with the reality of dredging in Florida by overlaying your PCEs, your Panama Canal equivalents, with what happened in Panama a long time ago. And John, that's how I make it relevant to you and to the other students. Because for all the celebration that this feat 100 years ago caused, you need to realize that that's something that we do have done many times over since those 100 years happened. And more importantly, I'd like the rest of our state to understand and know that. Because if we are unaware, if we think that we've always had asphalt, then it doesn't hurt to add an extra lane. But if we realize that the 8th lane has already destroyed habitat and building a 9th is going to destroy more, then maybe we might take some pause and maybe we might reflect a little bit more on how we're impacting, right? If we already know that creating the Tamiami Trail is going to cost the grandchildren of those who created it billions of dollars to undo and millions of animals sacrificed in the process, then maybe we would rethink about what we do next time. So the first thing you do is you put a picture of you in your earliest memory of water. The second thing is it's a research paper. It's basically you doing a little research on a body of water near your home county and uploading that into a blog along with a photo. It could be a Google map, it could be some archival picture, but just information that the viewer can know about it. And then the third thing you're going to do is something that I really believe is going to be the most important thing, but you have to let yourselves go. Beneath the mural, which is going to be in this location, and remind me the name of this building?
That's the computer science and CSE.
Have you guys, I know you're 8 days into campus, but have you seen this building yet? Yes. Okay, there's like a little food stuff across from it. So the mural is going to go there, and beneath the mural, the art students in the room, could the art students stand up one more time? Please, come on, I want to honor you. These 14 individuals are going to create a series of shelves that is going to hold not the ceramic tile, but the art that you're going to create. Everyone gasp. So the art that you as engineers are going to create, and here is what we have in store for you. A year ago at a center here, I created a replica of the Fountain of Youth, and I asked people to go into Gainesville and find water and then bring it to the Fountain of Youth. It was a process art that I used. So a lot of you through life probably think of art as something, I mean, I'm actually probably underestimating you, but society at large thinks of art as something that's two-dimensional on a frame, as opposed to a performance piece that Lady Gaga might put together, right? Most of people think of art as just, you know, something you do with paint, right? Well, in our world, in this classroom, I would like for the performance to be the art. And what I want you to do, you come from different places, some of you from nearby, but most of you from different places, I want you to find water. I want you to find a special place. You're 8 days into Gainesville. You're going to be here for another 4 years. I want you to find a body of water in a park, special place. And I want you to hang out there for a minute. And I want you to understand what that water is. I know it sounds a little hokey. Just go with me. You know, it's day 8. You can do this. I want you to feel what that ecosystem is. And for a second, I want you to ignore all the other artificial constraints that we as an order society need. And I want you to connect with that ecosystem. I just got back from a little vacation. I was walking through the redwoods, in the Redwood National Forest in California. And as I walked through that forest and I saw these huge, huge trees, I experienced a bunch of things. I saw the way that the nutrients flowed up and down that tree, and how an entire ecosystem, habitats were created. I could see time, 1,000 years of time, before my eyes, because this tree represented that. I could connect, right, with something way beyond the 49 years I've been on this planet, right? There was a way of feeling part of nature. So much of our lives, by necessity or by laziness, are stuck on a little screen or a little keyboard or a little game or a big monitor, and we forget that the most remarkable thing is out there in front of our very eyes. And if you understand how water gets to that pond, how it evaporates, how it's part of a water cycle, if you could somehow connect with that viscerally, understand it, then you can fall in love with it. And I actually need you to fall in love with it, because if you don't fall in love with it, you're not going to care for it. And when you have to sit at a desk 22 years from now and decide whether you're going to carve through it or not, if you don't love it, chances are you're going to carve through it. If you love it, chances are you're going to find a better solution. So what I want you to do is go and find the water, and then I want you to take a little vessel that the 14 art students will give you some direction on how to create, because we have rules. And I want you to put that water in the vessel, and I want you to take a picture of yourself in that space with that vessel of water, and put that on the blog, and write a little blurb about that place and that moment. And what I want you to do as a class is to become these eco-emissaries so that the rest of the engineers and the rest of your college understand the importance of nature. And the last thing we're going to do on July the 30th is have a performative piece. We're going to have music playing from the tower. We're all going to convene in front of the library with our vessels of water, and we're going to go in a procession. Just like water goes up and down and moves those ships across the Panama Canal, we are going to take this very important water, this thing that is going to be very important to you, the place where you're stressed out right before a final and you're going to go and throw little pebbles at, the place where you're going to reflect, the place where you're going to take someone on a date, the place where you're going to hang out, right? This beautiful place that you're going to find as your escape, your go-to place. You're going to take water from that place, and you're going to carry it across campus, and you're going to put it below that mural that I created. And you're going to write a little message on the label of that water bottle. You're going to put your name, where and when you collected it, and a little message so that when someone comes and sees this mural made by fire, by ceramics, right below it, you're going to have a wall of water, moving water, water that moved you, water that moved across a campus, and hopefully water that's going to move people to act in a proactive way to protect water in Florida for the next 500 years. And to me, that's how you commemorate, that is how you make relevant something that happened in 1914. By using it as a touchstone as you move forward in 2014. It's going to be a great pleasure to work with you on this project. If you need to get a hold of me, that's my information. But more importantly, you have your faculty who are going to lead you through the process. Thank you so much. Yeah, sure.
So we've got time to do Q&A. So if you want to go ahead and ask Xavier a question, I'll bring the stick mic to you. So anybody?
That looks like a question right there. I'm
No?
kidding. He was
Is it?
stretching.
Here we go.
Oh, thanks.
Have you been in Panama before?
Say that again.
Have you been in Panama before?
In Tampa?
Panama.
No, I've been in Panama, yes. I was in Panama in 1999 for a mural project I did on drug violence in Panama. That was invited by a group called La Cruz Blanca Panameña, the White Cross. And I saw the locks and I saw Panama. I really wouldn't have selected the Panama Canal as an event other than your university celebrating it. And I wanted to find a way of making it relevant to you. And as engineers, I think the biggest skill set you can have is creativity. I mean, that's what's going to differentiate you from anyone else that you compete with, and more importantly, in your work. And I think creativity, and I know I'm blowing my own horn here for a second, deal with it, please, sorry. But I think creativity is being able to connect dots, being able to make two things that have absolutely nothing to do with one another and blend them together to create something else. And I think people who can do that, people who can take information, okay, this building has to be built this way, and we have these parameters, and this is the budget, and this is this, and out of all that, see a solution that no one else can, that's what's going to make you a star. That's what's going to make you grow. And that ability to do that, right, to go beyond the obvious, that ability to think in a creative way is important, which is why on your 8th day, and I keep on saying 8th day, it's probably the 3rd day, I have no idea what day it is, but just on your 1st week or 2nd week of class, your university thought to marry art and science, to bring art students and engineering students together, and to bring a pretty ambitious, collaborative public art piece to you. Thank you. There's a hand back there. You can scream too, you know.
So at the beginning of your talk, you were talking about the wavelengths
Yep.
of light. First, was that sort of like a metaphor for time, in that like there's like more than we're just perceiving?
Yes, yes. I mean, first of all, here's the good news about art. A painting that you see or an art piece that you see is a conversation. Okay, first of all, it's never stagnant. So I intended something when I created that installation, and absolutely, those 50 years mark time, and the wavelengths mark visible time. Roy G. Biv marks the wavelengths that are visible to the human eye. That's what I chose to mark human history. But guess what? After I create the piece, you, the viewer, has your own interpretation of it. You know, that's the beauty of art, that art is this exchange between artist and viewer. And in many ways, it's a dialogue. I think a painting doesn't exist. I know this sounds really weird, but I don't think a painting exists unless there's a viewer. If no one's seeing it, that's not a painting. That's some pigment brushed on something. It comes alive when there's an interaction. Otherwise, it doesn't exist in my mind. I know I'm being weird saying that, but that's how I feel.
Have you considered that there are wavelengths beyond the wavelengths beyond visible light?
Of course. Yes. What do you mean? Yes, of course.
Okay, I'm done.
No, of course, yes, absolutely. And not only that, there are universes inside universes, of course. And the poor guys at this place, are so sad. How do I get there?
The guys in Antarctica?
No, well, no, they should have probably sad because it's cold, but they have a killer hot tub down there. The guys at this place, or is it? Here. No, God. At CERN, you know, these guys. These guys are so sad. They thought they were going to discover so many other things in there. They discovered a theory that was postulated 50 years ago. So what? Oh my God, they wanted everything. They wanted new dimensions. They wanted all sorts of things to come out of that little tube. And they didn't get it. So what are they doing? They're building a higher energy one. So yes, there are. No, they are. I mean, it's closed down and they're building a new one. So yes, there are clearly worlds within worlds. And what I think the overarching lesson here is humility. It's not to think that you know. You don't know. You know what I mean? You clearly don't know. You know what you know now, but you are standing on the shoulders of those who discovered something for you, and you are going to create something for the next generation to use as they innovate. I mean, that's what science is all about. Science is nothing but an endless quest.
So I'm actually gonna hijack this for a second and ask you a question that I've been curious about. And when you were presented with this project, you didn't know what you were gonna do going into it. And we do the same thing with our students. We present with a project that they have to go through a creative process. So could you briefly talk about the thought, I guess, adventure you went through in going from start to where you are right now?
Sure. So it's a progression, right? Thank you, Dan. It's a progression that involved colleagues and involved different parameters. So we had meetings. First of all, has the dean been introduced? Yeah? So there's Dean Lucinda Lavelli, who is the Dean of the College of Fine Arts. Please give her a big hand. She's the reason all of this. She is literally the reason all of this is happening. She runs something called Creative Bee, which is bringing creativity to the university during this second summer session. So she invited me to collaborate. But as an interdisciplinary thinker, as a big thinker, she thought more than just to have me collaborate with artists in her college. She thought of having me work with scientists, and there's a bunch of other projects I'm doing involving foresters and dancers. But in this case, it's how do we begin to, wrap ourselves or wrap our minds around this issue. So in this process, it's everything from the resources available, the time, the aptitude, right? Like you're brand new, had this room been smaller, and you as a team would have been skilled in making models. I actually wanted to dredge a canal right through campus. I did, right? I did. And then I found out that you guys are 3 days into campus, and it's like, okay, they can't do that. They just got here, right? But I wanted to do bigger things like that. So through that process, right, what I wanted engineers to do is to sort of emulate the engineering of the canal and bring it here and do these participatory things on campus. Then, speaking with Dan, we perfected it. I personally think this is a much better project than the one I originally came up with. Now, had I been in a room by myself without interacting, without being flown up here a handful of times, without meeting with the librarians, without doing my research, this would have been a completely different project. But by opening up the way we did this morning in a round table in the art room and everyone talking about their experiences and what they bring to the table, it became a better process. So that's part of how the creative process worked itself. It worked itself here. And it's really weird, just for those of you, I mean, all of you are creative. All of you have gotten into this university, which, by the way, congratulations. I mean, it speaks to your dedication. It speaks to your intelligence. It speaks to your perseverance. Congratulations to be sitting in this room. And all of you probably also know how you find creativity. It happens when your subconscious is alive more than anything else. You're hardly thinking about it, and then you have that eureka moment, right? It happens to me when I'm driving, when I'm walking. But the problem has to be in your head the whole time, right? The solution doesn't come naturally. I mean, it doesn't come by thinking about it. That's just going to pop in because your brain is always working. But unless you're challenged and trying to figure it out, like I did 24/7 with this project for a few months, the solution isn't going to pop in. Your brain has to be working and reworking. And there's a couple of times where you send it out there, and then you get some feedback and says, that's not so good. And you have to be responsive. You have to know how to receive that feedback, and whether you respect the person who's giving you the feedback or not, or whether that person is giving you feedback based on something that you shortchange yourself in explaining. So those are parts of the give and take in collaborating. And then at the end of the day, it's also about implementing, right? Without you, there is no moving water, right? So I have to be responsive to you, but more importantly, without you, I could care less about moving water. What I really want more than a mural is 174 eco-emissaries at this university to inspire the entire class of 2018, who will then inspire the class of 2019 to do it all over again, and so forth and so more. So my audience is you, right? So to create ways to collaborate, to find ways of interacting, to create processes is what I do in my art. And the more I do it, the better I become. The more you do it, the better you become. Dali would tell his student painters, paint or paint. If you want to be a better artist, practice, paint more. Well, the same thing for you.
When we first started on this project, Panama was way down there in Central America, but Xavier brought something to my attention that I wasn't aware of living in this landlocked we are landlocked here in Gainesville, and that's the impact that the current Panama Canal extension is having on our state of Florida. And I wondered, how many here are from Miami or South Florida?
Oh my God, 305 in the house. This is me. Hello.
Thank you.
Look at this.
I wondered, Xavier, if you could speak a little bit about the change of happening there because of the canal.
Part of what's happening in Miami is that we are dredging the port of Miami, that gorgeous port that takes you to South Beach, right, where all the cruise ships are. That port isn't deep enough anymore because we now have mega ships to bring even more. I don't want to sound negative about globalization because I understand its role in our economic system, but let me go at it for 2 seconds, okay? Because on one side I have coral at the bottom of the port of Miami, and on the other side I have a bunch of items made in Taiwan coming across an even bigger ship to find their way to my home, manufactured so that they self-destruct within 2 years, so that instead of replacing it or fixing it, I buy a new one. And that keeps the economy going and it keeps the ships going. And we need to build deeper canals and therefore deeper ports. But by building these deeper canals and deeper ports and facilitating globalization and more consumerism, we are destroying ecosystems which are going to have Antarctica chop its Western Antarctic ice sheet in the water and submerge those ports and those coastal cities and cause much more damage and much economic hardship than any gains from globalization. And I know that sounds really simplistic, but at the end of the day, we need to find a way of balancing things. And today, the coral at the bottom of Port Everglades lost so that we could dredge a canal or a port deeper so that the mega ships coming in through the new gates of the Panama Canal could find their home in Florida. And a bunch of ports across our seaboard are competing against one another because they want those mega ships to come to their port so that they can create more jobs and more people can have wealth. And the challenge is to find a way of not pitting one against the other. The challenge is to find an intelligent way of living sustainably, right? And right now, we are in a society that's all about consume, 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 throw away, throw away, throw away. And by taking you into a little pond and having you hear some little frogs and crickets, I hope to begin to give you a little sensory ammunition to fall in love with the eco side of it, because too often that's a side we dismiss. So the Panama Canal has its relevance today because the dredging that happened in 1914 didn't stop. It's happening today and to the day. And the dredging that cut a swath across my community to create this trail hasn't stopped. It's happening today in my port on my drive to work every day. So these are real issues that artists as thinkers, artists as opinion makers, artists as ideas generators, artists as people who can frame and conceptualize, artists as people who have knowledge. I'm speaking to the 14 of you in this room, right? And engineers who are also, in my opinion, individuals who belong and need to be in the creative class, need to work together to problem solve. And as I said a while ago, this isn't just something that happens inside a formula or an equation. This is something that has stakeholders. This is something that has political muscle, economic muscle. And it's about you using your creativity to problem solve this. Because I can promise you, this is the challenge of your lives right here. Florida and water. That is your challenge for the rest of your lives. I mean, that's what we have here. I guess our fountain of youth runneth over.
All right, so one more time, let's thank our speaker. All right.
Wow, that's a thunderous applause. Thank you. That's all.
Well, thanks for coming.
I can take one-on-ones if you guys want to talk to me or something.